Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Fire Up Wisconsin. My name is Scott Morgan, off the Motor City Madmouth, and I got what I consider my regular crew here because we just added another person to the network, and he resides in the same area that Eric Katz is, as Brett Gardipi. Brett, welcome to the show. We're finally glad that we were able to get you on the broadcast.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
I work with Brett on another network. We do some stuff in the morning from time to time. And when I saw that Brett was heavily connected to Wisconsin, I'd have brought him on any show anyways. But this one seemed appropriate because we'll certainly talk about things all too familiar. But Brett will be invited to any show that we have on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. That's an open invitation. Anytime you feel like it, Brett, you're a good people. And we're very thankful to have you on. So let me give you an overview of what we're going to be doing. Candy Ebling will probably be on a little bit later in the show. She has other commitments. I think 3 Chicks in a Pod. So on Sideline Sports, she'll be on that at the beginning. But we have Brett. Welcome again, Brett.
Thank you.
And Rick Curdy. Well, we all know him, Mr. Opinion. And why don't you let Brett know how you got that name, Mr. Opinion?
Because I just tell people my opinion and I just let it rip. And some people kind of agree, and other people are looking at me like, "What in the world are you talking about?" So I just say how it is, and that's just me.
All right, Eric. That's
What's up?
Welcome back, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Is this a crew you wanted now?
Yeah, it works out for me. I was, I definitely wanted Rick there, and Brett's a bonus.
Yeah, like I said, and Candy will be on. I want to make sure that this show has a really big Wisconsin flavor, and now I can expand it more by being able to invite guests as this thing continues to develop. The time slot on Tuesday will either be around the 7:30 hour or the 8:30 hour, depending on what happens later on, and we'll try to work it accordingly. But we'll keep you posted on social media. Excuse me, sorry about that. With that said, let's get to our first topic. Can Milwaukee support an NHL team? Let me give you the overview. Okay, Milwaukee 3-0 win over the Chicago Blackhawks early October. Mostly Blackhawk fans sold out the game in minutes. And then the second part of the question I'll get to after we're done is what happens to the Admirals. Focus on the NHL in Milwaukee. So, all right, Brett, you're the new person out here. Why don't you give me your opinion on that?
Yeah, no, I do think that we could, judging by how quickly everything sold out back when we had that game in October. It wouldn't be we've tried to have an NHL team be here before. Back in I believe it was like 1989, we put in for one of the 2 expansion teams that were coming into the league in 1992. But it turns out that they wanted a $50 million in order to get into the league. And at the time, Lloyd Pettit, who is kind of trying to set this all up, and the rest of the Admirals, they weren't really willing to pay that. So I do think that, judging just by how quickly everything sold out and the levels of excitement that there were around here, I do think that we can support it. The real question is, it might take a while to get good, because a lot of these expansion teams, they aren't necessarily good right off the bat. So the real question is, would we be able to get good enough, quick enough to keep the fans drawn in to make some real money off it?
Yeah, the only expansion team in recent memory, the Vegas Golden Knights, got off to a really nice start. Actually made it to the Stanley Cup final their first year. But I got news for you. Other teams will learn what players to protect versus not, so that they don't get their roster go ahead and rated as much as Vegas. And Seattle obviously came down to earth a little bit, and they're taking a little while. So with that said, since it is a 2-part question, Brett, what happens to the Admirals if Milwaukee were to get an NHL team?
I don't really think that it would change too much, because I would imagine if we got an NHL team, I would imagine that they would want to play at Pfizer. And the Admirals right now play at the Panther Arena. So in all reality, I don't think that anything would really happen to the Admirals. But that's just the way I see it.
Okay. All right, Eric, you're there. What do you think?
I mean, I've been calling for it for a while. I mean, Wisconsin very much is a hockey state, particularly in Madison, where they love their Wisconsin Badgers hockey, both men's and women's teams. also Milwaukee, I think, has the fans to do it. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go by last season's stats because really the season has just begun for the AHL. Last season, Milwaukee was out of all teams was ranked 15th in all of the league in terms of attendance. I know that when the NHL came to town, this place was popping, but they were just averaging just below 5,000 fans a game, which to me is pretty good considering the market. So clearly the interest is there. And I really believe that Milwaukee should have an expansion team. They're a team up north. They'd have some natural geographic rivalries with the Red Wings as well as the Blackhawks. And to me, with the Admirals being very well liked in the city of Milwaukee, I think it would be great for the city because the city has shown that they can support baseball. The Admirals are very well supported. And also, obviously, the Bucks, just given, it's the glory days of the Bucks right now. The Bucks are very much supported, even during the not so good days. I really think it would be great for the city because the state itself is very much a hockey state. There's a bunch of NHL players who come from this state, whether it be Madison or other places. And I mean, the amount of junior leagues they have around, and plus they've got the weather for it. Where to be truthful, Wisconsin, the amount of outdoor rinks I see of them playing hockey and whatever, I think it would be great for the state itself.
Well, you also have the Minnesota Wild in the area. Almost, if you think about the NFL, you have Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota, Chicago. So it's
right.
If you replicate that situation, although it would be hard to do that if you're changing time zones. But I've seen crazier things happen. So my question to you, Eric: could the Admirals and an NHL expansion team in Milwaukee coexist? As Brett alluded to, you have the Mecca there, as well as Fiserv Forum.
Well, I think they would probably want to play at Fiserv Forum. It's a state-of-the-art arena. Marquette's basketball teams play there, as well as obviously the Bucks. And there's also numerous other events hosted that Fiserv does. It's state-of-the-art. I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to play there, but also, there are a bunch of AHL teams that are coexisting with current NHL teams, like the Wolves do it already with the Blackhawks. Texas does it with the Stars, and then as well as Colorado does it with the Avalanche. So it really wouldn't make a difference. I mean, Rockford. I mean, Illinois has three hockey teams, two of them being minor league, with Rockford as well as the Chicago Wolves. So they've had to kind of coexist with the Blackhawks being the star of the show, particularly during the time when the Hawks were winning all those Stanley Cups. So it can be done. I mean, the teams are doing it now, so I really don't see a real difference. I mean, Toronto, San Jose, I mean, they could, and as well as, Tucson with their AHL team, they could, even though it's like obviously two different things, it still can happen. I mean, the minor league team would still operate like normal. I mean, their attendance might get hindered upon, but the Wolves as well as Rockford seem to still be moving along quite nicely.
Yeah, I could see a team though where if the Mecca, you have the small arena, because obviously the dates are going to be juggled between the new NHL team as well as the Bucks and concert. But no, you bring up some intriguing points. All right, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very surprised that Milwaukee doesn't have an NHL team. They proved they can support the Bucks, the Brewers. Of course, you got the Packers. Milwaukee's a growing city. It's a great city. I'm very surprised that the NHL hasn't looked at Milwaukee, or I haven't heard Milwaukee's name. I always keep hearing Quebec, of course, in Las Vegas in the past, and Seattle. And I thought, what about Milwaukee? I know it's a smaller city. I know it's a small city to have an MLB team, but why not have a team in Milwaukee? I think it would do great there. Have great rivalries with the Red Wings, with the Blackhawks. You can have a nice rivalry with them. It's a fun city. I would love to see a team in Milwaukee, and I've talked about this before in previous podcasts that about can Milwaukee support an NHL team, because I always thought maybe I'm missing something there.
Yeah, I think the most logical cities that you'll see in the NHL would either be Houston, would be one, Kansas City, or Milwaukee. I can't think of another one off the top of my head that would make any sense. So I would love to see the NHL definitely go there. And of course, you guys have already talked about it. The rivalry you'd have between the Red Wings, the Stars, as well as the Blackhawks. That's obvious. So another NFL Norris division, as Chris Berman would say. All right, well, let's talk about Milwaukee Brewers. GM David Stearns recently stepped down. All right, Brett, give me your thoughts about that. Is that going to hinder them a little bit, or do you think they have an adequate replacement?
I do think they actually have an adequate replacement. I know Matt Arnold's been with the team. Stearns actually hired him in 2015. He's been the general manager. This will be his second year, and now he's taken over for Stearns. So I do think that he will be able to slide right in and kind of just replace what Stearns has been doing, because as some of his moves have been questionable. The Josh Hader trade comes to mind, but overall, to me, David Stearns has done really well with this team. 554 wins, 4 playoff berths in his tenure here. That's a lot more success than most years of that the Brewers experience. So there might be some growing pains. Arnold might still have some things to learn, but I think he'll be able to pick up on most of it. I think he'll slide in very nicely.
Eric?
I think that obviously, losing David Stearns, obviously lose a guy who's just been proven to be just made the Brewers a very consistent franchise in baseball up to this. Prior to that point, they had gone to the playoffs like about 5 years in a row, and they had made it that far. Obviously, he's a great talent evaluator by finding guys like Jake Cousins and things like that. Even this year with Trevor Gott, as well as a great guy to find a great guy to work with just anybody, particularly when Craig Counsell was already there. He kind of fit right in, and that was that. And I think that Matt Arnold's been in the building. Matt Arnold's had an influence on a number of those acquisitions. So the fact he's already been in the building, been a part of the decision-making process, I mean, there's going to be a change. I mean, he's going to probably want to put his own stamp on the team, which instead of be David Stearns' shepherd. But I think to be truthful, Arnold's been in working for the Brewers for a while. He's been David Stearns' right-hand man. The replacement, it should be a seamless transition.
Rick?
Yeah, I agree with Eric. I would be concerned if they got someone from the outside, someone that wasn't familiar with the organization, or they got someone from, somewhere else. But this guy has been with the Brewers, so he knows the insides and outsides of everything in there. So I think it'll be a smooth transition. He's been there a while, so he's there. It's not like I said, he's not with another organization, so it should be fine. But the other guy did such a great job. And and he'll be missed. But I think the Brewers, as long as they got Counsell and everything in place, I think they'll be fine. They just need to get some offense. But other than that, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, David Stearns has definitely had some unbelievable success in that short period of time. He really has. And I agree with you, Brett. The Josh Hader trade just made no sense at all. He actually finally got going in San Diego and went deeper into the playoffs for sure. So, but you know what? More power to David Stearns. I have a feeling at some point he may have been a little bit burned out in the general manager's role, and I could see him resurfacing maybe in 2 or 3 years with a different job. That happens. When you think about guys that have been in a role for a while, the one that stands out to me is Theo Epstein. And here's a guy that took a step back, went somewhere else, had success there, take 2 or 3 years off, and then they're back in the saddle again. Geez, even though Dave Dombrowski isn't young compared to some of the guys we're talking about, he's dealing with his 5th team that he's guided to the World Series. Some guys just simply need a break. And I think the thing that's harder for most general managers nowadays is the fact that analytics will drive everybody crazy because of the way teams are constructed too. And that to me is just unreal. So with that said, okay, we're going to talk a little bit of Milwaukee Bucks. This team should have made it to the finals last year, but Chris Middleton got hurt. But they're off to a nice start again. Brett, what do you think about their early start?
Oh, I really love the start. I saw a lot of Bucks fans on Twitter. They're complaining about our shooting right now because it is rough at times. We missed, I think it was 12 threes in a row to let Detroit back into the game yesterday. But what a lot of people don't realize is we're missing 3 out of our 5 best three-point shooters right now. Chris Middleton's hurt. Pat Connaughton's hurt. Joe Ingles is hurt. Ingles hasn't played with us yet, but he's always been around a 38-40% shooter from three. And Brooke Lopez has been absolutely unbelievable protecting the paint for us. So, and he's shooting about 35% from three as well. Drew Holiday has been inconsistent, but his defense has always been top notch right when we needed it. We saw that against Philly when he shot 2 of 15, but then stonewalled Harden and forced a tough shot out of him. So, and overall, like, it hasn't always looked pretty. But at the end of the day, I can't really complain about anything the Bucks are doing right now. 6-0, it's hard to argue with the 6-0 record at this point.
Yeah, well, Mike Budenholzer to me is one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA, and he is because he's in a market which is a small media market. But who can doubt the job, Brett, that he's done in Milwaukee? This guy here, to me, we talk about coaching chains that aren't successful, then we talk about other ones that are. We all know that Bill Belichick doesn't produce head coaches. All he does is produce guys that unfortunately don't have a lot of success. But you can't say that about Greg Popovich, though. I thought Brett Brown did a good job in Philly. We all know the job Budenholzer is doing, don't we?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We saw Budenholzer's success even before that in Atlanta when he didn't have a superstar level player and yet still won 60 games, went completely undefeated in the month of January in like 2015. So Budenholzer's always been a really excellent.
Yeah, well, we'll pick up that thought. Go ahead, Brett. Well, all right, we'll continue to pick up that thought, and when we get him back, that's okay. But meanwhile, there's no question that Mike Budenholzer, to me, has done a good job, and I'll tell you what, the Detroit Pistons gave the Bucks a run for their money last night. Brett, you still with us? Well, all right, I'm sure he'll come back. I'm not really worried about it, but the reality of the situation is the Pistons really gave the Bucks a run for their money is what they did. All right, Brett. All right.
Yeah, so
continue on. Yeah.
No, I was just saying how Mike Budenholzer to me has always been an excellent coach, and we saw that even before Milwaukee when he was in Atlanta, when he led that 2015 Hawks team to an undefeated month in the month of January and had 4 out of 5 players go to the All-Star game. Like, to me, he's always been one of the more underrated. Hello?
Yeah, there's no question that I think Mike Budenholzer is one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. He doesn't get a lot of fanfare from Milwaukee. Rick, why don't you pick up where Brett is at in terms of Mike Budenholzer?
He's done an amazing job in such a small market. That just shows people that you don't have to be in an LA and New York, this big metropolis city to have this gargantuan payroll. As long as you got the Greek freak there, you're going to be fine. One of the best players in the NBA. He's amazing what he does. And, they're off to a 6-0 start. They won a championship. And Popovich, he just produces great coaches, like you said, like Belichick doesn't, or even other great coaches. I mean, don't forget Becky Hammond, too, winning a WNBA championship, and so he's done an amazing job, Budenholzer, and he's just so unappreciated because, if he was like in a bigger market, you'd be hearing his name every single day. But because he's in a small blue-collar town, people kind of say, they ignore him. And so, and we got to hear all this drama about the Lakers, which nobody cares about. So, great job he's done in Milwaukee. They're off to a great start. It's still early in the season, so we'll see how, not how you start, it's how you finish. But so far, they're off to a terrific start in Milwaukee.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, Brett, I don't know if you caught this, but the Pistons are an up-and-coming team. They really are. And I think they're starting to reap the benefits from their draft. But Milwaukee, let's face it, Giannis Antetokounmpo to me is one of the most, how do I say, I hate to use him as underrated, but unheralded superstars because he doesn't mind staying in a smaller market where most guys would like to jump ship is what they would somewhere else is what they would. But no, he doesn't mind staying in Milwaukee
Well,
and being the big man in town.
I mean, part of that too
Oh.
is Giannis really doesn't like bigger cities. He really doesn't.
I was gonna say, yeah, we when it comes to that too, you can almost, in a way, say a lot of people do underrate him because when I hear people talk about Giannis, all they want to talk about is, oh, he's not skilled. All he does is get to the basket. All he does is dunk. He's 7 foot. He just runs and dunks. And to me, that's just a ridiculous notion. Like, if you can create the most efficient shot in the game of basketball every time on the court, why wouldn't you just do it?
Well, you want a little bit of history that I have with an indirect history I have with Giannis? The guy that drafted him, John Hammond, I worked with him with the Detroit Pistons. He was the assistant general manager. And John found this guy, and I know every time I used to eat dinner with John, we used to talk all day long. And when you're in the industry and you're covering these teams, you'd be surprised some of the actual people that you meet and how much you'll learn from them. So yeah, I think you're right, Derek. Why don't you continue with your point about the Bucks and the small market and all that? I know you were on to something. Continue.
Well, the thing about it too is Giannis is not the most social guy out there. He really isn't. So a place like a big market like New York City or even Chicago, it just would not be a fit for him. And I don't think, there are some guys who just do well in like the smaller market areas, and Giannis has proven that he's had success, and he's kind of the guy who just becomes content with where he is instead of being a Kareem and just go to Los Angeles. He's just pretty content at where he's at. I mean, he already has a number of things going on in the area, and like, why change when you're being successful?
That's true. Rick, anything you want to add to it?
No, I just love him because he's the humility that this guy has, and that's what a lot of the NBA players need: humility. And you're not seeing that a lot. You're seeing them just sit there, getting their money, being drama queens. This guy's so happy with his life. I mean, my goodness, he came from Greece. He was a nobody, and he's a superstar, multimillionaire, self-made person. And he's just a nice, good guy. You don't hear any scandals. You don't hear him leaving practice. You only hear him complaining that I'm only making $25 million a year, pouting. He's just so happy with his life, and who wouldn't be? So I love Giannis because we need more of that, not only in the NBA, but in sports, humility.
Yep.
Well, what I like about what the Bucks are doing, I think they have his brother there too with them, don't they?
Yeah.
And he's actually not a bad player. If you're looking for a guy that will eat up 6 fouls, his brother will do that. And in today's modern NBA, there's nothing wrong with having a guy that'll eat up 6 fouls and get somebody that commit a foul or two at all. Even nowadays, it's a jump shooting league, anyways. It really is.
And also, what's great about the Bucks too is, in the midst of their 6-0 start, the Bucks, part of it too is they play great team basketball. I mean, Budenholzer, obviously, he did extremely well in Atlanta. It was just, unfortunately, the last year it wasn't so hot, but he was kind of at the end of the rope with that team, so he left. And he's been proven to be successful everywhere he's gone. And the Bucks are no different. He finally got the championship ring to kind of show for it. But the thing about the Bucks too is, they're missing a couple starters plus a key bench player in Joe Ingles. Part of it too is they play some people. What people forget though is they play some pretty damn good defensive basketball, and that's something that's really hard to play these days in the modern NBA, which is all about guys throwing up threes and guys scoring like crazy. And also the Bucks, they've had some quality wins along the way, which makes their streak even more impressive. They beat Philadelphia, a full-strength Philadelphia team, which Philadelphia will more than likely be in the playoffs because they are a good team. Can't count out a Doc Rivers-led team. And also they beat, say what you want about the Nets right now with recently firing Steve Nash, but they will, a team with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons, they're gonna rebound and go there. But again, it was another quality win. The Nets always give the Bucks a hard time. They are a threat. I'm not saying they are right now, but in general, they are a threat in the East. And so that's what's made it so awesome. And also beating a very young Detroit Pistons team, which I think they're having guys who I think will be able to lead the team back to the playoffs. Not necessarily this year, but this year they've actually been in some ball games. Heck, they beat the Warriors.
Right. So, Eric, let me ask you a question. I don't mind getting off track just a little bit here and there, especially when you come up with an interesting point. Okay. And Brett and Rick, I want you to chime in on this too. Do you really think the Nets fired Steve Nash?
No.
Okay.
No, it was Kevin Durant. It was 100% Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, which I used to really like the guy as a player, but right. I can no longer stand the guy because the guy complains about everything. And whether it be about his contract, whether it be about his team, but blah, blah, blah. He did this. It's the same old act with him. He did it in Oklahoma City because of Russell Westbrook. He did it with the Warriors toward the end with Draymond Green, and he's doing it now with everybody in there, from Kyrie Irving, Steve Nash, you name it. He's doing with everybody to the point where they released a statement saying we're going to move forward and have him here. It was 100% Kevin Durant. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, Steve Nash. I think Steve Nash in the future will be a good coach. I mean, the guy proved it when he was on the Warriors bench and being able to develop Steph Curry. I think he will be. He just needs the right situation where he needs guys that respect him, which I don't think the Nets ever did, because every time we throw a play out there, the Nets would just ignore him. And and there's a reason they're 2-5. I think he will be a good coach. I just think he needs the right situation. He needs a situation where it's not a bunch of ego hurt star players like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. But no, Kevin Durant was 100% behind it because the guy nearly left. But the problem was they couldn't get a deal because nobody can equal a deal for Kevin Durant. And also the question teams are going to start to ask now is, in spite of all that talent, it's kind of like what became of, I wouldn't say it's going to be the same thing with what happened with Terrell Owens. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be, for all that talent that he has, and he has a lot of talent as a player, is he really worth the headache he potentially brings? And he's been a headache everywhere he's gone.
All right, well, Brett, what do you think? Do you really think that Steve Nash got fired?
No, in fact, I feel like it was more so like you guys with the players, but at the same time, I feel like Steve Nash should be relieved that Brooklyn let him go. He should be doing backflips right now that Brooklyn let him go, because I think Steve Nash will be one heck of a coach one day. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's really a coach you can throw into that Brooklyn situation with Kyrie being a diva 24/7, with Kevin Durant's ego, with not many games out of James Harden, and now what? You expect Ben Simmons, who hasn't played in a year and a half, to be your answer? No, to me, it's one of those situations where he never really got a fair shake. And I saw the people just naming names like, well, he had Durant, Kyrie, and Harden on the same team. Like, I think they played, 16 or 20 games together?
Yeah, they didn't play him.
Like, what? I don't know what you expect them to do with 20 games of the three together. And now Ben Simmons apparently forgets that half of basketball is trying to score. Like, to me, he just got put into this horrid situation, and it just progressively got worse. And now I feel like his reputation has taken a hit for it a little unfairly, and I really hope that I see him on a different team in a better situation.
Well, the NBA has a way of just forgiving guys. Okay, I mean, it's not the first time the Nets have been in this situation where, they had a bunch of overinflated egos in a locker room. They've done this twice now. They did it with Joe Johnson and all of them, and Joe Johnson was kind of at the end of the rope there. And they go ahead and throw Jason Kidd there, and Jason Kidd's the type of guy who wouldn't put up with it, and then eventually they had to let Jason Kidd go because the situation got so toxic in not just with the front office but in the locker room as well. I mean, Brooklyn has made this mistake twice. Let's not forget. People forget about the first dream team, then this dream team, and then this supposed dream team. I think was probably worse than that one. I mean, I think part of that was Kidd's own doing. But this one with Nash, I think Nash the league has a way of forgiving people for their sins. I mean, they did it with, they done it with Jason Kidd more than once, because now he's coaching again. He's, with the Bucks, although he didn't really have the success that I think he should have had, he still put that team in a very good spot for going forward. And I think Nash will get a job. I mean, judging by what he did with Steph Curry when he was on the Warriors bench, with Mark Jackson, I think he will get another opportunity. But the thing about it too is he just was put in a really bad situation, and it was bad even before he even arrived.
Right.
It was a situation where you have a bunch of overinflated egos of at the time it was James Harden who wasn't happy. You have Kevin Durant, starting to do his act. Then you have Kyrie Irving, whose refusal to get the vaccine for the sake of the team. You have that problem as well. And then all of a sudden you flip Harden, then you go ahead and bring in Ben Simmons, who probably was even more of a headache than Harden, because Harden at least went out on the floor and was trying to at least be a contributor despite the headache he brought. I think he just ran into a really bad situation. It's kind of like a job where it's a bad fit. You realize it's a bad fit, and you do your best to kind of get through it, see what happens, and then you and then you move on.
All right, just to make sure, subscribe to our YouTube channel by visiting www.southfloridatribune.com and advertise call 954-304-4941. The audio portion of the show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have difficulty subscribing to it from the website, www.southfloridatribune.com, no problem. Just go over to youtube.com and please hit the subscribe button and look for South Florida Tribune. You'll have it. There you go. So just want to make sure everybody has all our information out there. And I'll just reemphasize it again. You can find South Florida Tribune again through the website, southfloridatribune.com. So there you go. And, and we try to make sure that there's a link on there as well. Or like I said, just go to youtube.com and look for South Florida Tribune subscribe button. There you go. All right. With that said, Rick's been waiting patiently about it. Give me your thoughts about the Nash before we go on to the Packers shortly.
He is a complete scapegoat in this whole thing. They had to blame somebody. This whole Kyrie Irving mess. Why that guy is still there. Why Adam Silver has not suspended him, since he's all about racial equality. And you have this guy spewing hate, spewing this anti-Semite stuff. Not sorry for what he did. Still there. In Milwaukee and the Brooklyn, I keep wanting to call them New Jersey, Brooklyn, are just a complete mess. I have absolutely no respect for them. Nash is just a complete scapegoat in all this, with all the drama with Durant, with the idiocy of Ben Simmons, and the hatred and the racism of Kyrie Irving, who's just a completely lazy human being, complete scapegoat. And if I was Steve Nash, I'd be so happy to get out of that toxic relationship, and hopefully he'll go somewhere else and be successful. Will he be a good head coach? I don't know. The jury's still out for me, but he should be given another chance, absolutely, because he did not get a fair chance all there with the Nets.
Brett saw my comments earlier when I went ahead and mentioned them on a different thing. So you know what? That's what I love about working with Brett. We're two Midwestern guys. We pretty much know what we got to do. You know what? I'll give you my brief perspective on the whole thing. I believe, in my mind, Steve Nash resigned. He had had enough. He really did. The man had had enough. Tell you why. If you have to deal with Kyrie Irving, 1 minute you don't want to get vaccinated, next minute you do the anti-Semitism, then the next minute you want out thinking you're going to be a part-time player, and you name it, this guy overshadowed his antics versus what his play is on the court. I mean, that's all there is to it. Kevin Durant, I can't stomach that guy anyways. In a great situation in Golden State, so I believe it, and pair up with Kyrie Irving, please. Steve, you know what? Sometimes I have a hard time dealing with Stephen A. Smith because I think he's a little too loud for my taste. But the guy does research his points well. He does. And anybody that attacks Kyrie Irving, that like Smith does on the large platform, obviously knows what he's talking about. He really, really does. So toxic, no doubt about it. Drama, no doubt about it. Dysfunctional, no doubt about it. That's everything you've got there. It really is. I'm surprised they even brought this group back together.
And look who they got as their head coach. They got the guy that was suspended from the Celtics for having an affair. So even more drama. So I think the ownership likes drama. I think I don't know.
But you know what, Rick? In this particular situation, and I don't want to get into too much because we're on a Wisconsin show, I think Udoka could be a big time hire. They need to do it now. because they're debating with the fact that you tear this thing apart or can you win with this group. So this is one of those situations where, number one, Udoka is never going back to the Celtics. I don't think they plan to bring him back. That's why this is an easy escape for him. So therefore, why not let him go to the Nets? I mean, give it one last shot with this group because they've got a lot of work to do. I don't care what other old veteran players I hear. There's talk about Carmelo Anthony going there. Yeah, okay. So we have another guy over the hill and through the woods to grandmother's house we go. No, okay, because no, I'm not going. I'm not American Idol. Nobody's going to go out there and ask me to sing forever. Or you might as well bring in the Memorex class, okay? Because then I'm bound to go out there and break that too. But the reality of the situation for me is, you know what? I love what they're doing in Milwaukee. And when I talk about the Nash situation, I do think he'll be a fine coach somewhere else under much better circumstances. You know, if there's ever a superstar player that really was able to make it work and get rid of another coach, Magic Johnson did it when he got rid of Paul Westhead. And we all know what happened there when Pat Riley took over. We really, really do. And I think that's the thing that we look at. I mean, Mike Budenholzer and Larry Costello have something in common. They're the owners and coaches of 2 championships is what they are. How many people in this generation even know about Larry Costello? I don't know. I do. I mean, I'm probably the oldest one on this panel for sure. 1962. I don't think you guys are in that neighborhood, but
No.
you know, but it is what it is. So I know we're going to talk about the Packers shortly. I know Candy Ebling will be in a moment. So let me get your perspective. Well, let's talk about the Packers and the Buffalo Bills. All right, Brett, give me your thoughts on that.
And that in all reality, I try to take the positives out of that game because I gave us about a 1% chance to win. I did not expect us to win. I was trying to be realistic about it. So I told myself I wouldn't get too upset, and let's look at some of the positive takeaways. What was positive was Aaron Jones running the ball 20 times, and look at that. It produced 143 yards on the ground. Romeo Dobbs made 2 phenomenal catches. And another one good takeaway that I had was Samari Torres, his touchdown. To me, what really impressed is he did something that none of our receivers had done too much this year. He ran his route, he looked back, he read the safety, and then ran the rest of his route based on what he did and got himself open. So to me, that was kind of like a veteran move that he did that we haven't seen all year, just kind of finishing your route depending on what the defense is giving you. So in all reality, I thought we played fine, especially too since Devondre went out with an injury. Quay Walker, he disappointed me. He can't get into that situation on the sideline. It's always the second guy that gets caught. So, and overall, I actually think we played pretty well. And if we didn't get called for that offensive pass interference on that touchdown, we would have had a chance to win that thing because that would have been an extra 7. Now it's 27-21. So I actually thought we played well. We actually exceeded my expectations by a lot. So I was actually happy about our performance yesterday, more so than in recent weeks.
Yeah, the 10-point score, I actually thought the way Buffalo was rolling, and let's face the reality, Josh Allen's a beast. He just bowls you over this guy. I mean, he's a freakish athlete, isn't he? Anytime a guy can put his hand in front there and push people around, to me, this guy is a defensive player playing offense and just bowling people over. I mean, and here's a guy that got passed up by a few teams out of the University of Wyoming. I'm not going to claim the University of Wyoming is quarterback but I'll tell you what, Josh Allen, I thought the Packers are lucky they didn't get humiliated by more than 10 points.
I think part of that too is that, I think toward the end, the reason why that they didn't get humiliated by 10 points was Josh Allen's biggest flaw is sometimes the guy can just get careless with the ball.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, during those drives, Buffalo was moving it. They were inside the goal line for one of the turnovers, and they were just moving the ball, period. I mean, yeah, Green Bay put up a bit of a fight. They made it a 10-point game to me, which, to be truthful, that should be kind of counted as a win on their book because I really thought Buffalo would annihilate them. But part of it was but again, Buffalo just moved the ball. I mean, Quay Walker, how stupid can you be? When someone touches you on the sideline and you're a crucial part of the game, you can't do it. I mean, the guy, if you're shoving a coach, the player is gonna get tossed every time. because the player actually has the padding on, the coach does not. But that was one issue that went wrong. Another issue is that they ran the ball extremely well to my surprise, but a lot of those yards came during in the second half when the game was kind of out of hand. Yeah, they could have made it a 27-21, but but Buffalo was moving the ball. Green Bay had no answers for anything going on over there. The only reason that they were still in it was, Josh Allen kind of just made a couple stupid throws that anybody can pick off. It's not like these were plays that, these were great plays on the ball. These were, what are you doing, Josh Allen?
Yeah, now it makes you wonder. Rick, some thoughts?
Well, I thought that the Buffalo would annihilate them. I thought it'd be like a 49-21 score. But Green Bay hung in there. But Buffalo is just way too tough. They're just so good. They're on a roll right now. They just went in there business as usual. We didn't dominate, but we pretty much handled them pretty well. Green Bay just doesn't have the pieces. Aaron Rodgers looks old. I'm sorry to say that. He looks old right now. He looks beaten up. So, but Buffalo's doing great. McDermott's a great coach. I've been saying about this guy when he was with the Panthers that this guy should be a head coach. He'll do great. He's doing fantastic there. Josh Allen's probably, him or Mahomes, probably two of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. It's like splitting hairs. They're just on a roll right now. Buffalo looking great. And Green Bay, they just don't have the pieces, and kind of depends on how Aaron plays, and he's not been playing very well.
Well, I mean, let's face reality. They're in the midst of a 4-game losing streak. Matt LaFleur never had anything more than 1 or 2 prior going in. The reality is Devontae Adams isn't doing much better in Vegas either. He went over there and decided to leave, and the grass isn't greener in Vegas, as you can tell. So that idea to go with Derek Carr didn't work out. I understand his frustration for leaving Green Bay because he wasn't sure what Rodgers was coming and going, but this is a lose-lose situation for both. So, sorry. Well, with that said, you have the Green Bay Packers facing the Detroit Lions this weekend. Now, you want to talk about some chaos. We got it on both ends, man. Aubrey Pleasant was fired as coach. I think the defensive backs coach for the Lions yesterday. The Lions just gave up a lot of yards against the Miami Dolphins. And now, today, they make one of the most baffling moves by trading TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings. I don't get this. So why don't we put this game in perspective? The Packers and the Lions. Brett, what do you expect?
So I can see this game going one of two ways because there's 2 versions of the Packers offense I've seen this year. The version where we started out 3-1, where we ran the ball 25 times or more. That's the version we need to see because I don't think we can underestimate Detroit. Detroit's had some pretty ugly losses as of late, but we still can't take it easy on them and expect us to just walk in and expect them to lay down and get a victory. It just doesn't work like that. So in my ideal reality, I expect us to run the ball 30, 35 times and create a more balanced offense for Aaron Rodgers. I would actually like to see less RPO from the Packers because we can't seem to block very well for it. It's just confusing the linemen because they don't know whether they're run blocking or pass blocking. So I would like to see some more designed run plays, and I would just like to see us work the middle part of the field between 5 and 10 yards. Because we're either throwing it behind the line of scrimmage a lot, or we're just airing it out 30 yards. To me, we got to start working the whole field if we want to win. I do expect us to win this one, but there's also a version of this where Aaron Rodgers thinks he has to throw the ball about 50 times. I think 40. He's thrown about 40 in all of our losses, like between 35, 40, 45, and that's just not. Aaron Rodgers can't do that anymore. He's got to understand that this offense has to run through Dillon and Jones. I'm not saying completely take Aaron Rodgers out of the game plan, but he's got to understand that this team just isn't built to throw 35, 40 times if we want to win.
Okay, well, let me ask you, with that said, Brett, are you surprised the Packers did not make a move at the trade deadline?
No, because I'm at this point, I'm used to it as a Packers fan. We don't really tend to make a lot of trade deadline moves. Do I wish we could have went and got somebody younger? Yeah, if we would have been able to snag like a younger receiver like a Jerry Jeudy who was rumored to be available, I would have loved that. But I know the one rumor I didn't like seeing that we were targeting AJ Green, and I was like, we don't need to make any win now moves for this year. Like, I was slightly disappointed, but at the same time, if there's no young receiver that could not only potentially build with Aaron Rodgers, but potentially build with a rapport with Jordan Love in the future in case we do move on from Rodgers, then yeah, no, I get it then at that point because I just didn't want to see us make a move for a veteran this year. So if there's no young receivers available, I think we made the right move.
Okay. All right, Eric.
I think, well,
Well,
Green
Eric,
Bay, I'm a little.
hold on, Eric. Why don't you backtrack on the Buffalo Bills and Packers? What was your perception of that contest?
I think, the better team won. I think Buffalo just, Buffalo just, came into the game, did what they had to do. I mean, Buffalo is a very good team this year, and the funny thing is, their best players haven't even come out yet. Aside from some on offense, their best cornerback Tre'Davious White is coming back this week, and they've been able to go 6-1 without him. So imagine what's going to happen when you have trade day back out there. I think they're going to do that. I think Jordan Poyer, he's going to be sidelined for a little bit, but once you bring him back, oh baby, you're talking about a team that could potentially win the Super Bowl, or at the very least has a very great chance this year. And Josh Allen playing MVP level. I mean, this is the team to beat right now. But Green Bay, as far as that goes, I mean, they got the yards that they got in the second half when Buffalo decided to take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, and they they were able to kind of make the score less than what it really. The score I don't think really reflected the game. I think Buffalo moved it on them at will. They could do whatever they wanted on offense. Run the ball, pass the ball. Green Bay just didn't have anything for them, particularly with Stephon Diggs. As far as Stephon Diggs going in there in the tunnel, man's got a right to do that when he's burning their defenseless backs as of late. But again, Buffalo is just that team. They are that dominant, and I think Green Bay bounced back against Detroit because they are probably more defenseless than anybody in the NFL right now. And I think they bounce back, but as far as getting to the playoffs, I just do not see it happening.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, when you break it down, there's no question that Green Bay hadn't been a double-digit underdog in ages. So, and that's where we're at. Oh, well, look what we have here. Joining us, Candy Ebling, joining the broadcast. So, all right. We're just in time for the football stuff. But before we go football, though, I want to get Candy Ebling's perspective about whether the NHL can be supported by Milwaukee. Then we'll hit her with the football stuff and bring her up to speed a little bit.
So they sold a game for Minnesota versus Chicago in Milwaukee. It sold out in a matter of minutes. I get it, but that's a novelty. That's a one-off, one-time thing. Milwaukee has supported AHL. I remember the Milwaukee Admirals, and they did it well. But I don't know that they would be able to support an NHL team. I don't think they would pay the prices every single night. I could be wrong, but that's my 2 cents. I don't know that they would support, especially with the Blackhawks so close. But
No, you don't think you'd see a Milwaukee versus Chicago rivalry like we have the Cubs and the Brewers? Kind of wonder about that a little bit, right?
I do, but again, Chicago's got a long history in that sport. Milwaukee would be newcomers to the slate. There's always going to be a Chicago-Milwaukee rivalry. I mean, the Bears against the Packers, the Bucks and Bulls. They're always. And to be honest with you, it's always been Cubs, but it used to be White Sox, Brewers, and they used to have some big old brawls.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. The original 6 team. All right, we'll get her back here All right, Candy, some thoughts about the Packers and the Bills. I know you agonized on it. I went to sleep early, so I didn't have to listen to you get upset because I crashed after a very tiring weekend. Give me your perspective on the Bills and the Pack.
What I am surprised and shocked at times is our play calling. Our running game was working, and yet we strayed away from it time and time again when I'm like, why are we trying to pass the ball when our top two receivers are down and we lost another receiver? I just don't understand the need to if the running plays are working, why do you stray away from them? In a game, I get next game, maybe we don't emphasize the run game, although the run game are going to be our strong suit. And I know you have Aaron Rodgers, who's this great quarterback, but he's not throwing the balls to the guys, or the receivers aren't catching it. Whatever that mix is, they're not connecting. The running game's working. You got to stick with the running game.
All right, well, let's move on to the Packers and the Lions. I know there's a little bit of a rivalry here called House Divide in my place. Okay,
Shift your head a little bit aside, Scott. Shift your head a little bit more. See, there's a little Packer Lions plaque right up on the wall. Yes, we're a house divided, but mind you, I like the team that's on top on that plaque. Mind you, that would be the Packers.
I can hardly tell. Okay. But with that said, this is an interesting matchup, and it became a little bit more interesting today because of a baffling move. Number one, you got Matt LaFleur and Dan Campbell, who I truly think is over his head. That's number one. And now you got Jared Goff against Aaron Rodgers. Jared Goff is probably hoping, I wouldn't mind leaving too. So if you're looking for another quarterback, you can go ahead and find one. Because his 2 years, and I think Jared Goff is a much better quarterback than he's shown in Detroit. I mean, Anthony Lynn gets let go a year ago. The offense has been good a little bit this year, and the defense has been awful. So, if I were if I had to make a prediction and lead with my head, not my heart, I would give the edge to the Packers. But the reason why I would give it to them now, because I don't understand the logic to me why the Lions traded TJ Hawkinson to a division rival. That to me is the most bizarre situation I've ever seen. That's all I'm going to say on this game. All right, we're going to let Candy go ahead and talk about it. Everybody else, and then we'll have our parting shots.
Well, they're going back to the scene where, if you remember, 7 years ago on my birthday, December 3rd, the infamous at Ford Field, Scott and I were both at the game. He was with George in the media in the press box, and they were walking down to the locker room, and they were saying, his buddy George was saying, the game's done. There's only a minute left. We're up. There's no way we're going to lose it. And Scott was like, I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this. And sure enough, Aaron Rodgers threw a Hail Mary in the end zone for us to beat the Lions at Ford Field on December 3rd. I feel that the teams are both not doing well this year. Being that it's at Ford Field, I give the Lions a little bit of an edge, but I think the Packers need to turn it around. And I think they showed a lot of heart, I think, this week. I mean, the Bills are the team to beat, I think, in the NFL right now, or one of the top teams to beat, and they hung with them for a long time. I think the Packers finally get the necessary victory that they need this weekend.
And the reality of the situation is the Lions trading TJ Hawkinson and the Packers not making a move. Well, I mean, you got to get a feel of what's going on in both directions, but I'll let this one play out. All right, Brett, you're there. Give me your thoughts about the Lions and the Packers.
I definitely want to pick Green Bay. I can see a scenario in which we stray away from the run game once again, leading to an upset. But I do want to pick Green Bay. As long as we lead on the run, we have 5 maulers up front. We have good run blockers. Not to mention, we have arguably one of the best run-blocking tight ends in the league in Mercedes Lewis. So I think as long as we stay behind the big boys in the trenches there and run behind them and use that to set up the play action, get Aaron Rodgers under center to make that even more effective, then I think the Packers are going to pull it out on Sunday.
Okay, well, Kenny, why don't you give me a score?
24-17 Packers.
What about you, Brett?
I'll say I'm going to go 20-13 Packers.
All right, Eric, you're up.
31-17 Packers.
31-17. Any thoughts about the game?
Green Bay is going to bounce back from it. I mean, let's be honest. Detroit does not very rarely beats the Packers at all. They just don't. I mean, they've never beat them consistently. I think the last time they beat them consistently was many years ago. And yeah, they'll have a game kind of flare up every now and then, but the Packers have just, they come in there for their annual beating, and Rodgers knows that, he's lost 4 games in a row. He's in trouble. I mean, Detroit's not much better. Detroit's equally reeling at the moment with their in over his head Dan Campbell, who really is better off a position coach.
Right.
And so, clearly the Packers are just the better team. I mean, Detroit, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown. But other than that, they just traded TJ Hawkinson, who was probably their second best receiver. They traded him in the division, which their GM should be sorry for that. I don't know why you trade him in division where he's going to terrorize you twice a year for the next while. No, but Detroit's been broken since they fired Jim Caldwell. Caldwell at least had them. I wouldn't say he probably had them hovering between being at least a factor and maybe the playoffs. At least he had him at that point. Then they essentially threw it in the trash with Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
But I think again Aaron Rodgers just very rarely ever loses to Detroit. I think the last time he lost, he got hurt and pretty much just said, "I'm done." Back in 2018, Detroit was playing and Green Bay was playing with Deshaun Kaiser.
Right.
So but other than that, Aaron Rodgers should bounce back. But again, we all said he was going to do that against Washington, and look what we got.
All right, Rick.
Oh, I have Green Bay 35-17. They're bad, but the Lions, I'm sorry, Scott, are horrible. And I live in Charlotte, and I've been saying the Panthers are probably the worst team in the NHL. I think we might have a new candidate with the Lions, and I've never been a big Dan Campbell fan. I did not understand why people were so ecstatic about this guy. To me, it was all bark and no bite. They look horrible. The Hawkinson trade, I mean, it was like, why? Not only do you trade one of your best players, but to a rival. And I mean, do you really need that many draft picks? I mean, to get draft picks, is it worth it? Yeah. It's mind-boggling me what the Lions do. I think the Ford family are like the worst owners. I thought it was Kepper. I think the Ford family is. They need to stick to making cars, get out of the sports business, and go to a new owner. I mean, you fire a head coach that went 9-7 and you bring in all these other coaches, and they've been terrible. And so as bad as the Packers have been, and as much as Aaron Rodgers has struggled, they're not that bad. And the Lions are just horrible. So I have this one-sided 35-17. I think Aaron will have a great game, and the Lions' misery will continue.
All right. Well, you know what? I'll make a clean sweep. And I'm taught to be neutral and objective here, whether anybody ever wants to believe me or not. I don't care. It is what it is. But I'm going to say Green Bay 29, Detroit 20, period. I see that. Why? I still think that the Hawkinson trade just boggles my mind. And what's worse about it? I got to talk about it on Fire Up Michigan next Monday night. And I have the Detroit Tigers that we're going to be doing. So with that said, let's go to our parting shots. And coming up after Fire Up Wisconsin, we're going to have 108 Stitches baseball talk. And I'll be joined by Jordan Long, Will Vogel, and Johnny Perlinger. So she's a really good, young, talented lady, and we're looking forward to having her on as well. So I always look to bring on new talent. And Brett, I'm just glad that you're part of our lineup now as well. So I'm glad you're here. So with that said, Brett, you're new to this game here. Why don't you give me your parting shots into sports about what you want to get off your chest?
Oh, yeah. So my parting shot is going to be about the Green Bay Packers. This offseason, I really need them to pick a direction. Because 2 years ago, we're drafted like we're building towards a future. And then we signed Aaron Rodgers to this big contract like we're trying to win now. And now we keep making half our moves like we want to win now and half of them to the future. Guys, we need to just pick a direction. If we're trying to win now with Aaron Rodgers, let's go out and get some win now talent, not somebody who's going to be good maybe 5 years, 4 years down the road. So no, that's frustrating to me. Like I just need us to pick a direction and let's go with it this offseason. No more trying to straddle the line. That hardly works. It's rare to see a team try to straddle win now and build towards the future and have it be successful. So I just want to see us pick a direction this offseason.
Okay, Rick, 30, give me yours.
Well, since this is a Midwest show, let's stay in the Midwest. And Chicago White Sox, I mean, I scratched my head with this organization. They just hired a new manager. I don't even know who he is, what his name is. He's some bench coach with the Royals who just got rid of Mike Matheny. And why? I mean, you have people like Joe Madden. I've been saying Don Manley to the White Sox would have been a perfect fit. They whiffed on that. You could have gone Joe Girardi. Joey Cora, I don't know how this guy does not get any managerial jobs. He played for the White Sox. I thought he had been perfect if they're looking for a manager with no experience. I think Joey Cora would be a great fit there. But no, they hired some nobody. And I'm sure this guy is so obsessed with analytics, which I am absolutely sick and tired of. Um, baffling hire. I don't get it. I don't know what the White Sox are doing. I would have stuck with La Russa. I mean, even though he's a 75-year-old, grumpy old man, who's so like, that generation is long gone. Baffling, you talk about Hawkinson. I was just completely baffled by the White Sox hire this new manager, Yon City. I gave him two, maybe 3 years. He's not going to do anything. And if he's such a great coach, then why did the Royals snag him up? So don't get it. Dumb move. White Sox, clueless.
All right, Eric.
Well, my message for the Green Bay Packers is very, very simple. Find yourself some quality wide receivers, whether that be in the draft or free agency. Apparently, you think that in the golden age of passing in the NFL, you somehow think that anybody and everybody can run a route and catch the ball. Well, I got news for you. Aaron Rodgers isn't Tom Brady who can lift like talented, who can lift no-name receivers to great heights, which includes multiple Super Bowls. Aaron Rodgers isn't that guy. Matter of fact, Aaron Rodgers probably pounds their confidence even more. He's only recently started to encourage them to the point he used to rip them in training camp to the tune of they got to do better. I'm sure he's ripped them privately to the point where the receivers have probably met privately, not just about their performance, but also about the taskmaster that is Aaron Rodgers. Which find yourself some receivers because Aaron Rodgers is right now on the hill of decline. Eventually, when you reach the top of that mountain, you start to go down. Going up it is optional. Going down it is mandatory, and he's slowly but surely about to roll down the hill. So find yourself some receivers, maximize the rest of Aaron Rodgers' talent and the rest of his football skills, depending on if and when they start to decline, and get himself a final ring before everyone else starts asking why didn't he go back, because his predecessor Brett Favre went to 2 Super Bowls.
Okay, Candy, give me your parting shots.
My parting shot is I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Giannis, for being a role model and for showing kids what's good with being a leader, being the role model, showing us what to do. I have pictures in my news feed that showed him out trick-or-treating with kids when there's so much wrong in the NBA and even in college football with the Michigan tunnel incident. Thank you, Giannis, for being a role model for the state of Wisconsin, for showing the world how good it can be and what it is to be a good human being in the role of sports, and letting us look up to you. Thank you.
All right. Well, my parting shot actually goes back to Sunday when the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Denver Broncos played. But guess what? Nobody could see them. I don't have ESPN Plus. Okay. There's certain games you don't mess with, and that's the London games. Those should be on television where you can absolutely see it. And they didn't get it right. I have no problem with streaming at all. We're okay with the Amazon stuff. We kind of gotten used to it. But don't mess with the London game. My God, at 9:30. No, I have to make a confession. Okay, I slept till 10:30 because I had just come back from a long, exhausting trip in 48 hours. But it's not the point. There's certain games that should be streamed and certain ones that shouldn't. And the one between Jacksonville and Denver was not it. Period. So, with that said, Candy, before I let everybody know how they get a hold of us, why don't you give the company information?
So, everybody, we hope you're enjoying this episode of Fire Up Wisconsin on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. If you'd like to listen to more of our shows, please subscribe. We have Inside the Pigskin, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Fire Up Michigan, Fire Up Florida, South Florida Tribune, No Limits, Real and Rare. Let's see, am I missing any? Sports Exchange, you name it. Come to our channel and watch it. Visit our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Advertise, call us at 954-304-4941. If you want to listen to the audio portion of our show at any time, you can hear it on iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please visit us at Twitter at Tribune South. If you have any show ideas or any commentary that you'd like to email us, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. We hope you subscribe to our YouTube channel and enjoy many of our different shows that we have on our channel.
Well done. And a lot of things that we try to do is not only by streaming as well, but we do a lot of things at the games that we go to. Well done, job, Candy. With that said, as we get ready to wrap up the show, we're not going to wrap it up unless everybody gives themselves, let everyone know how they can get hold of them. All right, we're going to lead off with the new guy, Brett. Looking forward to having you on more shows. I knew you would fit in nicely, my friend. So why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of you, all your social media and whatnot.
You can find me at Brett Gardepy on Twitter. Otherwise, I do have a podcast, Gardy3. That's GARDI3. You can listen to it on Spotify or Anchor. Currently, I'm only covering basketball, but I'm actually making my debut in a professional wrestling tomorrow. Me and my cousin are doing a live play-by-play of the show that's on, AEW. Otherwise, I'm also planning on getting into football as well. I'm still working out when I'm going to do that show. Otherwise, you can follow Gardy3 on Facebook or reach me at Brett Gardepy on Facebook as well.
Very good. And of course, I met Brett through another network, and I'm glad that he's joining us here on this show. If there's ever a show that fits you, Brett, this is that one. At least it's in your neck of the woods, and you're very comfortable with the lay of the land. All right, Rick Curry, you know the drill. Let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
You can find me on my website at www.charlottebats.com. Please go on there, sign our petition, as we want to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also on Facebook at Charlotte MLB, Charlotte Bats Baseball. I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. I'm on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Rick Curdy. And if you have any comments or questions, you can email me at cltbatsbaseball@gmail.com.
Hey, Eric, you know the drill.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Sports Team News, where I'm talking all things sports.
All right, does a good job with that. And of course, Eric is one of the primary co-hosts of Fire Up Wisconsin as well. And like all the people on my network, these guys certainly know how to move around when I need them on a different show from time to time. That's what we love. All of our guys are not only quality broadcasters, but they're chameleons as well. So, meanwhile, coming up after what Fire Up Wisconsin 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. So, on behalf of Brett Gardepy, Candy Ebling, Rick Curdy, and Eric Katz, my name is Scott Morgan, Route the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Fire Up Wisconsin. We'll be back next week with more updates on the doings and the state of Wisconsin and whatnot. Hope you enjoyed this broadcast as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Good night, everybody. God bless and be safe.
Get out and vote.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.